The den was carved deep into the mountainside, a sanctuary hidden beneath layers of stone and centuries of moss. Lyra Vale had stumbled into it 3 cycles ago, half dead from exposure and bleeding from a crash landing that should have killed her. The Varkesh, massive, wolf-like sentience with silver fur and intelligence that burned in their amber eyes, had found her broken ship scattered across their hunting grounds. They could have left her to die. Instead, they brought her here. Now she sat cross-legged near the fire pit, weaving dried grasses into rope, while Tovik, the alpha's youngest cub, wrestled with a strip of leather nearby. The cub was all oversized, paws and curiosity, barely reaching Lyra's hip, even when he stood on his hind legs. His fur was darker than the others, streaked with charcoal gray that would deepen to black as he matured. "Tovik, you'll tear it," Lyra said without looking up, her voice carrying the patient exhaustion of someone who'd given this warning a dozen times already. The cub's ears flattened apologetically, but his tail continued its excited sweep across the stone floor. He chirped a sound that sat oddly between a bark and a purr, and dropped the leather to nose at Lyra's arm instead. She scratched behind his ears absently. The gesture had become automatic. 3 cycles of living among the Varkesh had taught her their language of touch and sound, the hierarchy of their pack, the sacred nature of their dens. She knew that the Alpha, Tovik's father, had taken the hunting party deep into the northern valleys. She knew they wouldn't return until dawn. She also knew that the Krill mercenaries had been tracking her ship's signature for weeks. The knowledge hit her a heartbeat before the plasma charge blew the den's entrance apart. Stone and fire exploded inward. Lyra threw herself over Tovik as debris rained down, her body becoming a shield over the cub's smaller form. The air filled with smoke and the acrid stench of burned ozone. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard boots heavy, armored, too many of them. Biologicals detected, 2 signatures, 1 human, 1 native fauna. The voice was mechanical, filtered through a helmet's vocoder. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Krill hunters. They'd found her. She stayed low, keeping Tovik pressed beneath her as shadows moved through the smoke. The cub was trembling, a high-pitched whine building in his throat. Lyra covered his muzzle with her palm. A silent plea for quiet that the young Varkesh somehow understood. The human's the target. Eliminate the animal and extract the primary. 3 figures emerged from the haze, their armor matte black and bristling with weapons. Energy rifles hummed to life, targeting lasers painting red dots across the den's walls. One swept toward Tovik's huddled form. Lyra moved. She had no weapon, no armor. Nothing but 3 cycles of watching the Varkesh hunt, learning how predators thought, how they moved. She grabbed a burning branch from the fire pit and swung it in a wild arc, smashing it across the nearest hunter's faceplate. The Krill staggered back, cursing in his clicking language. His rifle discharged into the ceiling. Before he could recover, Lyra was already moving, her engineer's hands finding the emergency release on his armor's chest plate. The mechanism hissed open and she drove her knee into the exposed suit seals with everything she had. The hunter went down gasping. Human combatant, subdue with extreme. She didn't let the second one finish. The stone floor was littered with debris from the explosion. Lyra snatched up a jagged chunk of rock and hurled it at the hunter's knee joint, the weakest point in Krill armor. Something crunched. The hunter's leg buckled, but the third was already on her. The rifle butt caught her in the ribs, and Lyra felt something crack. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood. Through blurred vision, she saw Tovik trying to drag himself deeper into the den, his young legs unsteady with fear. The hunter raised his weapon toward the cub. No. Lyra's scream was primal, wordless. She launched herself at the hunter's legs, wrapping her arms around his knees in a desperate tackle. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and curses. The Krill was stronger, faster. He had training and armor and every advantage. But Lyra had something he didn't. She had 3 cycles of debt to a pack that had saved her life when they owed her nothing. She had Tovik's frightened chirps echoing in her ears. She had the memory of the Alpha's mate, pressing her own cubs close when Lyra first woke in this den, accepting the strange, hairless creature without question. She fought like an animal. Teeth and nails and stubborn human refusal to die quietly. When the hunter threw her off, she came back. When he struck her down, she got up. The den became a blur of motion and pain, her body accumulating damage faster than her mind could catalog it. The hunter finally pinned her against the wall, one armored hand around her throat. Should have stayed dead in your ship, human. Lyra grinned through bloody teeth. Should have. Checked the schedule. What? The roar that filled the den was earthquake and avalanche compressed into sound. The Alpha Varkesh hit the hunter like a meteor. 300 pounds of muscle and fury moving with impossible speed. The Krill's armor crumpled like paper. The other hunters tried to rally, but the Alpha wasn't alone. The entire hunting party poured through the shattered entrance, silver forms moving like liquid shadow. It was over in seconds. Lyra slid down the wall, her legs finally giving out. Through the chaos, she saw Tovik sprint across the den toward his father. Saw the massive Alpha gather his cub close with surprising gentleness, while still standing over the broken Krill hunters. Then those amber eyes found Lyra. The Alpha approached slowly, leaving his packmates to secure the intruders. He lowered his head until his muzzle was level with Lyra's face, close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath. For a long moment he simply looked at her, this small, fragile thing that had thrown herself between claws and cubs without hesitation. Then he did something Lyra had never seen a Varkesh do. He bowed. The entire pack followed suit, lowering their heads in a gesture that transcended species. Not gratitude exactly, something deeper. Recognition. The acknowledgement that pack wasn't bound by blood or biology, but by the willingness to bleed for those who couldn't defend themselves. Lyra managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. That's gonna be a hell of a story to tell Tovik. When he's older. The Alpha's rumbling response sounded almost like agreement. He called to his mate, who approached carefully with healing supplies the pack had learned to gather. As they tended to Lyra's wounds, Tovik pressed close to her side, his small body radiating warmth. Outside the den, dawn was breaking over the mountains. The Krill hunters were bound and silent. The pack began repairing the entrance, their movements efficient and practiced, and Lyra Vale, crashed human engineer turned den defender, finally let herself rest. She'd found her pack, and her pack had found her. That was all that mattered.